In this review we're going retro and we're going big. It's retro to 2008 and it's big because it's a 1:50 scale tower crane. It is the Potain MDT 178 by TWH Collectibles. That's in the huge box, and in the smaller box is the climbing cage, which was sold as an additional matching accessory.
Let's weigh it up.
The box for the crane is huge and it weighs in at 12 pounds 9 ounces. And as you might guess, that's 5.7 kilograms. The climbing cage is a bit smaller at 1 pound 1 ounces. And that's only 490 gramlets. The box is so huge you really need a crane to handle it. But if you're up to the job, out comes a manual we'll look at in a moment. And if we lift the lid, we can see the many parts well wrapped. The manual that comes with it is a professional looking booklet, and it starts with information about the real crane. Over the page we then see a picture of the model in its full configuration, and in 1:50 scale it's huge. There's a full annotated parts list, and then there are instructions to assemble the model. Assembly straightforward because much of it is built up in the box, although some of the sequences are a little odd, because it's much better to put a base counterweight on at the start rather than the end. And there's also a warning that you need to set the model up nice and straight. So that's the base model, which is TWH 047, and 047A is the climbing cage. Here's the box, and there's a sticker at the end which shows the colour. And if we turn the box over, we get to see a little bit of information. It's a model for Manitowoc, and if we look closely, there's the TWH Collectibles logo. To the outside comes the inside, and there's a manual. And there's a couple of parts stored in the top tray. And if we go on and lift the lid, we can see that there are a few more parts in the bottom tray. With that, let's move on to see the manual. And here it is, and it starts with a parts list. And again it goes through the step-by-step assembly instructions. And they are straightforward enough to follow. For the assembly, it's a good idea to start at the bottom. And we attach the tower to the base. It slots in very easily, and then you secure it with 4 screws. And these are also a nice fit and go in very easily. At this point we deviate from the instructions, and we'll load up the counterweight on the base. And these are made up of nice heavy blocks, which add to the heavy weight of the base. A nice touch is that if you need to level up the model, the feet are individually adjustable by screwing them up or down. The box is very big because the model is mostly fully assembled, and it's also fully reeved up, which makes things easier. We need to attach the counterweight jib, and it has some hydraulic lines which need to be fed into the tubular mast. Once we've done that, we can then locate it into position, and you start by inserting 4 screws at the bottom. Once the 4 bottom screws are done, we need to insert 1 more at the top. And we can say this is a model which enjoys a lot of screwing. That completes the entire top section, with just 1 more detail part to add, and that's an access ladder. And that's best clipped on at this stage. Now the giant hand cranes can lift the whole top section up onto the top of the tower, and with some expert cranesmanship, lower it gently into place, just making sure that that ladder is positioned properly. With that done, we can get back to screwing, and we have 4 more to put in to secure the top of the crane. So as you can see, the main assembly is straightforward. All that's left to do now is to add the rear counterweight, and that comes in a series of sectional pieces. They each have lifting eyes, which is very good, but the way it's been modelled does mean that you have to use the whole of the counterweight all the time, and it's not possible to use the model with a partial counterweight. Anyway, the giant hand crane doesn't care about that. It can lift the whole of the counterweight in 1 big load. As you can see, we've assembled the crane on a fairly short tower, but there are many more sections that we could have used. And it's great that the tower has been modelled with correctly sized sections. For our next trick, we'll add on the climbing frame, and it has to go on in this orientation. It slides on over the tower, and there's a gate at the bottom which can be swung shut. And the open side, which lets in the new tower sections, is on the left-hand side. For the assembly, we'll raise the cage to the top of the tower, and there it gets screwed into the connection points. Next, we add on a part over the hydraulic ram, and we follow that by the first of the walkway sections, and this is the lower section, complete with the hydraulic pump for the climbing ram. It slides over and presses in, and the process gets repeated for the final side of this platform. There's then a bit of fiddly work to join up the hydraulics, and we follow that by adding a ladder complete with safety cage, and that takes us to the top platform. And right on cue, that's another piece which slides in and then presses into holes in the climbing frame.
Let's weigh it up again.
We're weighing the model but without all of the tower sections. But even so, it still comes in at a hefty £9, nearly 7 ounces, and that happens to be nearly 4.3 kilograms. The model has a nice heavy base which is patterned to look like concrete, and the cruciform base is nicely modelled all in metal. The counterweight blocks are concrete coloured, and a couple have the Potain name on them. The tower sections are really excellent pieces of modelling. There are lugs for the climbing frame to use, and you can see that there are mesh platforms and metal ladders with safety cages. And these look really good. But it's tiny details which can impress most, and the holders and connecting bolts are also modelled. Here's another angle looking down into the top of a tower section, and these would also make great loads for a truck. The climbing frame is an impressive metal part, and it's made to a very high standard. But the triangle frame on top has only been modelled on one side, and although the platforms have nice metal hand railing, they seem to be a bit too low. And we'll see more about that in a moment. However, they do have very nice mesh walkways, and the hydraulic pump is well detailed with hydraulic lines. Towards the bottom is the hydraulic lift ram, and there are hoses which run to it, and you can engage the lifting frame with the lugs on the tower, although the ram can't support the weight of the full crane. Here's the open face of the cage, but it is missing a monorail beam at the top. The hook is a nicely modelled metal part, although the hook itself doesn't swivel. The climbing frame does come with the special hook adapter, and that is used for lifting the tower sections during the climbing operation. The top of the tower has the reducer section, which includes the connection points for the climbing frame, and a great detail is that all of the internal ladders are modelled. There's a toothed slewing ring at the bottom of the tubular mast and a nice big logo. And the cab platform is a terrific bit of modelling, particularly as the inside of the tubular mast is fully detailed. The cab has got windscreen wipers and a visor above, and there's decent detail inside. At the back of the cab platform is electrical cabinets, and these have detail within the casting. There's a metal platform to service the main winch, and the model also has the maintenance winch modelled, and that's complete with the arm and the winch motor. The handrails on the main model seem accurately scaled, but those on the climbing frame are too small, which is a slightly strange modelling error. The counterweight jib has the distinctive Potain shape, although it's not designed to be foldable like on the real crane. It has a nice mesh walkway, and there's handrailing around the counterweights. It's all modelled in metal, and at the back is the windsail. Also very nice is the metal Potain sign. The jib has got a fully modelled trolley motor, and that includes hydraulic hoses running to the mast. The trolley itself has got a man-riding basket. There's mesh walkway along parts of the jib, And the jib itself has been largely made up of accurate section lengths, although the one shown here is a double length section. At the joints there are screw fixings underneath, but the top connection is riveted, so some butchery is required to separate the sections. The overall geometry is straight and very good. In terms of functionality, the crane rotates very well, and it's nice and smooth on the turntable. The model also features a working trolley, and you use a supplied key on the trolley motor. It all works well enough, although it would look better if you have a load on the hook as you do it. Of course, the other thing you can do is to raise and lower the hook, and for that you use the same key on the main winch. The winch does not have a brake, instead it relies on friction, but it's good enough to hold at least one section of the tower. Another feature is the working maintenance winch. The arm can be moved in and out, and again you can operate the winch, although as you can see the hook doesn't put much tension on the rope. Another nice aspect of the model is that there are opening doors on the cab. There's the main entrance door, and that also has some graphics printed on the inside, and there's also a door into the electrical equipment cabinet. There's operating flexibility for the model, with the hook being able to be reeved with either 2 falls or 4 falls of rope. And to get 4 falls you just lower the middle block, and then it can be pinned to the hook block. To complete any crane model it's always good to have some lifting chains, so we'll add some, but these are not included with the model. What is included though is a concrete skip. It is Potain branded and very nicely made, and it also has an opening chute mechanism. And once again it shows the commitment TWH Collectibles had to producing detailed functional models. But in scale terms it seems very large. Here it is compared to a 1:50 scale man. We can use the adapter that comes with the climbing cage to connect a section of tower to the hook, and to do that you have to clip it in. It is a little bit fiddly, but it does work. The reason the adapter is used is to avoid the use of lifting chains. The climbing cage also allows you to have some interesting poses.
Time for a dim check.
So there's no doubt about it, this is a big model, and end to end it's just over 53 inches or 135 centimetres. This is another great model produced by TWH Collectibles. Modern tower cranes have only been rarely modelled in 1:50 scale, and no doubt that's because they become very large and expensive. However, in terms of detail and functionality, this is probably the best model of its kind. And it's a pity there are no new mass-produced models like this in this scale. But if you like large tower cranes, this one is certainly excellent.